In this video, we're going to learn about the hormonal control of the menstrual cycle. We need to know that the menstrual cycle takes approximately 28 days, and we need to know the functions of FSH and LH within the menstrual cycle, and also the function of estrogen within the first half of the menstrual cycle. An average menstrual cycle lasts around 28 days, although it can be more than this or less than this. The first day of menstruation, so the first day of bleeding, marks day 1 of the menstrual cycle. We divide the menstrual cycle into 2 phases: the follicular phase, which is the development of a follicle in the ovary and then ovulation, and then the luteal phase, which is the development of the corpus luteum in the ovary. This diagram shows the menstrual cycle divided up into its phases. So we have the follicular phase from roughly day 1 to day 14, where ovulation takes place, and then the luteal phase from around day 15 to day 28. Menstruation can last anything from about 3 to 7 days. It really depends on the individual. The menstrual cycle is controlled by 2 pituitary hormones, FSH and LH. It also needs 2 hormones that are produced in the ovaries. We call these the ovarian hormones, or sometimes the sex hormones. These are estrogen and progesterone. FSH stimulates the growth and development of follicles in the ovary. It also stimulates the production of estrogen from the follicle during the follicular phase. This diagram shows how the follicle grows in size under the influence of FSH. When estrogen is released from the follicle, it stimulates the proliferation or repair of the endometrium, and this begins to prepare it for possible implantation if fertilisation takes place. Estrogen also stimulates the pituitary gland to release LH. Estrogen produced by the follicle also affects the consistency of the cervical mucus, making it more watery and easily penetrated by sperm. Round about ovulation, the cervical mucus becomes a consistency the same as that of semen, so that the sperm can swim through it more easily. And we'll learn more about this later. When the estrogen levels reach their highest peak, this stimulates a surge in the secretion of LH. The surge of LH triggers ovulation, which is the release of an ovum from a follicle. And this usually occurs around halfway through the menstrual cycle at around day 14. So this diagram summarises the follicular phase. Pituitary gland will release FSH. This will stimulate follicle development, maturation, and the production of estrogen. Estrogen stimulates the proliferation of the endometrium and also the production of LH. The surge in LH causes ovulation, and once ovulation has taken place, the ovum moves into the oviduct and begins to travel along the oviduct, and fertilisation will take place if sperm are present. And then we move into the luteal phase. The luteal phase takes place after ovulation. So we need to know about the hormones secreted from the corpus luteum and the functions of these hormones. The remains of the follicle will develop into a corpus luteum after ovulation. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Progesterone promotes further development and vascularisation of the endometrium. Vascularisation means the endometrium thickens and develops many blood vessels in it to provide a good blood supply if an embryo implants. This means that the endometrium is ready to receive an embryo if fertilisation occurs. Progesterone also inhibits the secretion of FSH and LH from the pituitary gland. So this diagram shows the actions of progesterone. Right? Progesterone is released by the corpus luteum. It has a stimulatory effect on the endometrium, whereby it promotes vascularization, the growth of all these blood vessels. And progesterone has an inhibitory effect on the pituitary gland because it inhibits the secretion of FSH and LH. And you can see the changes in the thickness of the endometrium during the menstrual cycle. So, starting off on day 1, you can see that the endometrium's thickness decreases during menstruation. During the follicular phase, the endometrium gradually becomes thicker again during proliferation caused by estrogen. And then from day 14 onwards, the blood vessels grow and develop during vascularization under the influence of progesterone. So, high levels of progesterone inhibit the release of FSH and LH from the pituitary. The low levels of FSH mean that no further follicles will develop in the ovary. The low level of LH causes the corpus luteum to break down. This means that progesterone secretion falls. The falling level of progesterone triggers menstruation at the end of the cycle. So if we start off up at the top, we can see we have menstruation taking place as the endometrium is being shed. Even while the endometrium is being shed, FSH is being released from the pituitary, so follicles will begin maturing in the ovary. Once the follicle is secreting sufficient estrogen, then the endometrium will begin proliferation, it will start to repair. When the level of estrogen gets high enough, LH will be released in a surge from the pituitary. That will trigger ovulation. The empty follicle will then develop into a corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone. Progesterone will promote vascularization of the endometrium. However, if the egg is not fertilised, the corpus luteum will degenerate, levels of progesterone will fall, and we will get menstruation again. To summarise the luteal phase, so following ovulation, LH stimulates the empty follicle to form a corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone. Progesterone causes further development and vascularisation of the endometrium, and it also inhibits the pituitary gland. So FSH and LH levels drop. The lack of LH causes the corpus luteum to break down. Progesterone levels decrease. And the progesterone levels eventually fall so low that the endometrium cannot be maintained and the endometrium is shed during menstruation. At the end of the menstrual cycle, the levels of estrogen are low. This then causes the pituitary to increase secretion of FSH again, and the cycle will begin all over again. If fertilisation occurs, the embryo produces a hormone which causes the corpus luteum to continue producing progesterone for another 8 weeks until the placenta takes over this function. So to summarise, the hypothalamus secretes a releaser hormone which travels to the pituitary and stimulates the secretion of FSH and LH. FSH stimulates the maturation of follicles within the ovary. These follicles secrete estrogen. High levels of estrogen stimulate the production of LH from the pituitary. LH triggers ovulation and then stimulates the development of the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum secretes progesterone.